Do you feel sometimes overwhelmed, exhausted, fried, like your brain cells are leaping out of your skull? Yeah, well, it's been one of those days because in one day, these things happened. And I'm going to talk about some of them in more depth, but I just want to give you some sense of the totality of the insanity with which we deal on a daily basis to reassure you that you are not alone in feeling overwhelmed, fried, exhausted, and as if your brain cells are leaping out of your skull. Let's start with the fact that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly a prince in the British royal family, was arrested because of his ties to Epstein. Again, more on that later. But what I wanted to focus on was Donald's response to that arrest. First of all, he said about 20,000 times that it's very sad. Okay, not entirely sure why that's the way to characterize it. And then he said that Andrew's arrest sets a dangerous precedent of pedophiles facing consequences. Wait a minute. Is that what he said? No, it's not what he said. But I bet for a second you believed it. That is actually the title of Andy Borowitz's latest post on Substack over at the Borowitz Report. It absolutely sounds like something Donald would say, that Andrew's arrest sets a dangerous precedent of pedophiles facing consequences. But I think Donald did Andy one better, because what he said after saying several million times that it was very sad, he's an expert on the subject and he is in a position to comment. Why? Because he's been totally exonerated. Yes. That's what the man who is mentioned in the half of the Epstein documents we have been mentioned over 1 million times, according to Democratic Representative from Maryland, Jamie Raskin. And that's without the other 3 million pages of documents having been released, except Donald told us that in those 3 million documents, which we cannot see, there is evidence that Epstein was trying to rig the 2020 election so Donald would lose, which also kind of sounds like an Andy Borowitz headline because it's so unfathomably stupid and unbelievable. Or I guess I should say believable coming from Donald. That's probably a better way of putting it. Then, of course, we have the fact that Donald is ordering the U.S. military to amass a force surrounding Iran to prepare for what seems like a potentially imminent attack. What, to distract us? Well, apparently to take out Iran's nuclear weapons, which, by the way, we, according to Donald, already did. Okay, let's square that circle. For the first time, sadly, the Board of Peace met. You know, the Board of Peace with all those dictators and autocrats and failing democracies on board. And also, apparently, the head of FIFA wearing a red USA hat for reasons. And Jared Kushner, who last I checked is not a member of the administration and was not elected by anybody to anything. Most noticeable was the fact that during this riveting meeting that went on for over 2.5 hours, Donald could not stay awake. Take that, Sleepy Joe. Hold my beer. And then, to close things out, which I'm sure he was dying to do so he could continue his nap, Donald picked up his tiny little gold gavel and ended the proceedings. But before he did that, and this is what really matters, he announced that he was going to transfer $10 billion of our money into the coffers of the Board of Peace, which he runs. What's the conclusion we can draw from that? He just stole another $10 billion from the American people. Finally, in what to me is the most alarming development in this one day that's not even over yet, the DOJ. We need to come up with a more accurate name than Department of Justice for this corrupt agency, which is really just Donald Trump's personal law firm. They unveiled massive Big Brother banners on the outside of the building with a massive close-up of Donald's face and the slogan, "Make America Great Again." America is no longer a democracy. It is a deeply, deeply broken and corrupt banana republic being run by a bunch of deeply corrupt, broken people. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome to tonight's episode of Married Trump Live. It's great to have you here with me. As I mentioned today, British police arrested Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, formerly known as Prince Andrew, intensifying a long-running crisis for the monarchy over Andrew's ties to Jeffrey Epstein. He was arrested on suspicions of misconduct in public office after accusations that he shared confidential information with Epstein while serving as a British trade envoy. The arrest marks a stark contrast in official responses to the Epstein files. British authorities have moved aggressively to investigate potential crimes emerging from the 3 million pages of correspondence, while police in the United States, or I should say the Department of Justice in the United States, has done absolutely nothing. Well, that's not fair. The Department of Justice, under orders from Donald, has done everything in its power to protect the predators and put victims in harm's way. Buckingham Palace has faced years of scandal over separate allegations that the former prince sexually abused a young woman. Last year, King Charles III stripped his brother of his royal titles and evicted him from the Royal Lodge in Windsor to limit further fallout. I guess that's some form of accountability, but not nearly enough. And then finally, at last, Andrew was arrested. In a written statement in the wake of that arrest, King Charles said he supported a full, fair, and proper process, which is not something you will ever hear come out of the mouth of the current president of the United States, who is actively using the Department of Justice to bail out his friends and himself while targeting his perceived personal and political enemies. Epstein survivor Marina Lacerda spoke to MS Now this morning and had this to say about the DOJ's and Pam Bondi's handling of the files. Take a look.
I was there at that hearing with Pam Bondi, and I got to say, she really dehumanized us. It was really, I would say embarrassing on her behalf not to turn around and acknowledge us. The DOJ has not reached out. The FBI has not reached out. Pam Bondi has not reached out. Kash Patel has not reached out. And I love how they say that they have a clear communication line with us. And I got to say, it is not true. We have tried. We will continue to try. And it would be an honor to meet with them. And actually, maybe they should feel honored to meet with us because we have a lot to tell them.
What does it tell you that they haven't reached out?
I think that at the end of the day, they're protecting somebody. We all know that, right? But the question is not only who, it's how many people are they protecting? And at the end of the day, we know too much, and they don't want to know what we know. But in those files, which they have read unredacted, completely unredacted, they do know what's in those files. They know who's in that file, in those files. And I think it's really a question that we all really need to be asking. It's what I said before. Why haven't we taken the step to investigate all these men? And in some cases here, it looks like there are some women involved as well.
Well, Pam Bondi's involved, that's for sure. and she's been involved since she was Attorney General down in Florida. So, how many? Yes, that is a question we cannot answer, obviously. Who? Well, I could take a stab at that. Donald Trump mentioned in the files over 1 million times. Howard Lutnick mentioned many, many times, and admittedly having gone to Epstein's island with his family, including his children, after Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of raping a child. Mehmet Oz, who exchanged loving messages with Epstein around Valentine's Day. Les Wexner, multi-billionaire who financed Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, come on. Who? We know who. At least 6 people in Donald's administration, both the first and the second one, because don't forget Alex Acosta, are mentioned in the Epstein files in a way that cannot be described as innocent. This is a massive, massive cover-up. It is being carried out by the government of the United States of America. And every time another country takes this seriously and arrests people and forces people to step down and forces people to be held accountable, it makes this country look worse and even more degraded by the day. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Donald announced today at the inaugural Board of Peace meeting that 9 members have agreed to pledge $7 billion towards a Gaza relief package, and 5 countries have agreed to deploy troops as part of an international stabilization force for the war-battered Palestinian territory, to which I say, who gives you the authority to do this? This is an illegitimate, fake organization that was put together solely for the purpose of enriching Donald and the other people on that board. Indonesia, Morocco, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, and Albania, wow, look at the company we're keeping, pledged to send troops for the Gaza Stabilization Force, while Egypt and Jordan committed to trade police. Donald also announced, and I talked about this briefly as well, that the United States is pledging $10 billion for the board, though he did not specify what the money will be used for. It was also not clear where the U.S. funding would come from, as such a pledge will require authorization by Congress. Okay, says who? Someday I won't be here. The United Nations will be, Donald said. I think it's going to be much stronger, and the Board of Peace is going to almost be looking over the United Nations and making sure it runs properly. Unquote. No, that's not how any of this works. In fact, the Board of Peace may very well interfere with the United Nations' ability to get anything done. Let's watch a small clip from today's proceedings to get a little better, to get some understanding of how this whole thing went down. Take a look. Or not. Well, I'll tell you. First of all of the board members came out on the stage to Donald's stupid 80s playlist and stood around like a bunch of idiots because he didn't show up right away. They looked like people who'd been invited to a party they were dreading and did not at all want to be at. And again, the bad music. Then, after speaker after speaker stood up and apparently bored Donald into a comatose state, he slept a lot. Sleepy little guy. And then again, as I mentioned, the little gold gavel, which is probably the only reason he was there. This is going to be something to keep an eye on, because again, this is essentially it's like a shell company. It's to divert funds for legitimate purposes to further enrich the obscenely wealthy people involved. Donald imposed a series of tariffs last year with the goal of reducing the U.S. trade imbalance. Let's see how that's working out. Trade data published by the Census Bureau is showing that the trade deficit climbed, that means went in the wrong direction, by $25.5 billion last year to $1.24 trillion. Well done. According to new research published today by JP Morgan Chase Institute, tariffs paid by mid-sized U.S. businesses tripled over the last year, offering further evidence that Donald's push to impose higher taxes on imports is causing economic disruption. The additional costs have affected companies that employ a combined 48 million people in the United States. These are the kinds of businesses Donald had promised to revive. Instead, many have had to absorb the new expenses by passing costs onto customers through higher prices, employing fewer workers, or accepting lower profits, which is not something businesses are willing to do for the long term. While the research does not detail exactly how those added costs are flowing through the broader economy, it indicates that tariffs are being paid by U.S. companies. The study adds to a growing body of economic analysis countering the administration's claims that foreigners are paying the tariffs. But again, any of us who knows anything, like even the most rudimentary things about macroeconomics and economic policy, have known all along that tariffs are just taxes on the consumers of the country, putting them in place. So I have to confess, I don't know why it's taken so long for all of this to be borne out. Perhaps it's because, I don't mean to be paranoid, but perhaps it's because the Trump regime has not been releasing all of the data or has only been releasing the data that support their claims. I don't think we should put that past them at this point. I want to talk a little bit today about a piece written by Susan Page. And she wrote about something we've been discussing a lot. Now, we know it's obvious, not because of what they're doing, but they're actually telling us what they're doing. Donald and the GOP are doing everything they can to try to steal this year's midterm elections. They're pushing the SAVE Act, which will require passports to register to vote. They are looking to disenfranchise millions of women because your name on your passport has to match the name on your birth certificate. First of all, a lot of people don't have their birth certificates anymore. And secondly, most women who marry change their last names. I don't think it needs to be repeated, but it cannot be overstated just how high the stakes are this November. All 435 House seats, 35 Senate seats, 39 governorships, and effectively the direction of the planet are on the ballot. We have to win this year so that we can, at the very least, mitigate the horrors that will be carried out by Donald in the second half of his term. We're 9 months out. So there are a couple of clues here that should give us some sense of what lies ahead. Donald's approval rating stands at 36%. That's consistent with a 37% Quinnipiac poll in late January, 36% in Gallup in mid-December. Those are high-quality polls. If that holds, it would be mark a 7-decade low for a president heading into a midterm. In his first term, when his approval was 41%, Republicans lost 40 House seats in the 2018 midterms. Still, the Cook Political report lists only 18 toss-up House seats and another 18 leaning seats. Recent redistricting efforts in states like Texas and California appear likely to net out close to zero, so that's good. Another key number is 57.3. The University of Michigan's preliminary February consumer sentiment reading, so what does that mean? The index is falling 20% since Donald took office a year ago. The current reading is even lower among Americans without stock portfolios, which is most of us. A slight uptake this month was driven by wealthier investors, while lower income workers face slower wage growth and rising debt. Nearly 3 out of 4 Americans now rate economic conditions as only fair or poor. Disapproval of Donald's handling of the economy was at 59% in late January, according to NPR PBS News Marist poll. And most respondents said his tariffs have hurt because, unlike him, they understand how these things work. Republicans have a major advantage when it comes to money, however. The RNC reported $95 million on hand in January, while the Democratic National Committee owes more in loans than it currently has in the bank. That's not great. The Republican Senate Leadership Fund holds $100 million, nearly triple the $36 million reported by the Democrat Senate Majority PAC. And then there's MAGA Inc., another grift, the pro-Donald super PAC with $304 million on hand and no clear Democratic equivalent because America, because John Roberts, because Citizens United, because black money. Donald says he's raised more than $1.5 billion since 2024, though without citing any details. Whether he spends heavily to protect vulnerable Republicans or continues to focus elsewhere remains to be seen. My guess is he'll pocket as much of it as he can. Something to keep in mind as we move forward. So the reason to point all of that out is that just to know what the state of play is and to understand that while sentiment and momentum might be with the Democrats, the money advantage is not, which means what? Well, it means that we treat this race as if we are losing by 5 points. And we do everything in our power to make sure we win by 25. If you need to check your if your voter registration is current or where your polling place is any questions you may have, go to www.vote.org. I mean, there are tons of places you could do this. That's the simplest one. Rock the Vote is another one. It's important that you're up to date going into this election season, especially if you're in states that are typically states or counties typically targeted by Republicans to disenfranchise voters and kick people off the voter rolls. Really important. Stay on top of it. Keep checking. You know, if you check now and everything's good to go, don't expect that that's going to be the case in 6 months. Also, speaking of elections, the controversy surrounding a CBS Late Show segment with Texas Senate candidate James Tallarico has given the Democratic has given the Democrat who is running to be the Democratic candidate for a Texas Senate race new momentum just as early voting begins in Texas, which I have to say doesn't seem entirely fair, but that's the way it goes. Stephen Colbert said during Monday's episode that CBS told him not to broadcast Tallarico's appearance, citing pressure from the Federal Communications Commission. The network denied that accusation, but Colbert pushed back and released the interview on YouTube. Colbert said, quote, "Let's just call this what it is. Donald Trump's administration wants to silence anyone who says anything bad about Donald on TV because all Donald does is watch TV," unquote. Truer words. In the days since the video was released on social media, the clip has drawn millions of views and Tallarico's campaign has raised millions of dollars. Observers say the unexpected development could be a last-minute game changer in Tallarico's closely watched Democratic primary against Representative Jasmine Crockett of Texas. Again, that's not really fair to Representative Crockett, who would also be a good candidate. I would have much preferred that something like this happened in the general election because it is vitally important that Ken Paxton, the Republican running, not win. He is a Nazi. He's vile, and he must not be anywhere near the United States Senate. So, fair or not, we have two good candidates to choose from, Jasmine Crockett and James Tallarico. So we're going to keep an eye on this one, because if we keep doing what we're doing and Donald keeps doing what he's doing, Texas, Florida, North Carolina, places that we don't typically think will be in play. Okay. Question for you guys. I have been traveling a lot. I have a lot of traveling ahead of me. I have been doing other kinds of appearances and interviews, etc. So wanted to know what you thought about changing Mary Trump Live to 4 p.m. Eastern Time from 6 p.m. Eastern Time. If you like that idea, just drop a blue heart in the comments. If you're okay with 4 p.m. Eastern, just drop a blue dot, not a dot. sorry, a heart in the comments. Because we want to figure out what works best for everybody. But at the same time, so if it's later in the day, on occasion, I will have to get a guest host. And as much as we love our guest hosts, I don't want to ask that too much of them. And also, I like hanging out with you guys. Just want to make sure it's at a time that works for everybody. Okay. We have, thankfully, reached our emotional support moment. I have a strange feeling that most of you are, well, I know all of you are animal lovers, but I have a feeling most of you are also cat people. So today's clip is going to boost your serotonin, and it's one of those clips I just want it on an infinite loop. Because why? Well, it's a basket full of kittens purring in unison. Who needs anything else? So breathe and take this in. There's always one saying, who can sleep through this? Oh, how I wish one of those little guys was the Mary Trump Media Travel Kitten. We'll get there. We'll get there. But truly, can we just have more kittens? More kittens and more waves crashing on the shore. I think if we had a basket of kittens running the country, how much better would it all be? Anyway, thank you to everybody watching on YouTube, to everybody streaming on Twitter and over at The Good in Us, everybody listening to the podcast, to all of our new members, everybody gifting memberships, to all of our super stickers, and everybody giving us donations. Thank you so very much. And thank you for your patience while I travel and stuff. To our amazing moderators, for putting in the work every single day to make this a place we all want to be. And just, you guys support us so much, but we need more support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'm sure most of you have. If you have, do me a favor, tell somebody else about it. Get somebody else to subscribe. If you haven't, subscribe and then click on the bell icon and choose all, so you'll theoretically anyway be alerted every time new videos drop. Another easy way to support us is watch all of our videos, not just the lives. We have videos every single day, 365 days a year. Watch them, like them, share them, comment on them. That helps us, again, theoretically, with the algorithm. Also, it would be amazing if you checked out my Substack, The Good in Us. We're trying to build our community over there as well. And it would be amazing to have both communities sort of come together. So just Google Mary Trump Substack or Mary Trump The Good in Us, and it'll bring you right there. Also, there's a QR code for that. Or you could just go to marytrump.org. Oh yeah, merch. We have awesome merch. I keep forgetting to bring my merch with me here. I love my mug. I have to say, I'm quite fond of the mug. Oh, look, there it is. So yeah, t-shirts, tote bags, sweatshirts, hoodies, mugs, all sorts of cool stuff. All right, that does it for us. It is a day ending with Y, which means we'll be back tomorrow for another day ending with Y. In the meantime, everybody, please stay safe and be kind. Bye.